Great. Super. Well, we'll go ahead and get rolling. And then, Lori, if more folks are joining us, if you wouldn't mind just kind of paying attention to that. So today we're talking about cultivating an engineering mindset in summer learning, which is right around the corner. I don't know about you guys where you are, but I, excuse me, also run an after school program in White Sulphur Springs. And today is the last day of school in White Sulphur. So we are really in that summer mindset, like it's happening. It's really happening. And it's beautiful today, finally. So it also feels a little bit more like summer, which is really nice. Ooh, that doesn't want to play. That doesn't want to play either. So let's start with, what is an engineering mindset? Like, what does that term make you think of? If you can just put some words or, you know, a lengthier definition, if you want, in the chat of what you think of when you hear engineering mindset, or any type of engineering. Problem solving, yeah. What else? Thinking outside of the box, finding solutions, you bet. Geometric thinking, yeah, cool, thanks. We have a small group, but you guys are really good at participating, so thank you. That will make this a lot more interesting and engaging as you throw some ideas in there. And as more ideas pop up, feel free to add them, and any questions along the way that you may have as well. So this is just some of the stuff that I was able to find around some ideas for, which a lot of that is something that you guys have already talked about and thrown into the chat. Defining problems, providing solutions, and designing and developing innovative products. And then some of the more kind of ambiguous, kind of the bigger abstract ideas of seeking, thinking, and always being curious. I'm going to apologize right now. I have allergies, so in the mornings especially, it's just like, ugh, so I'm so sorry. But anyway, so this is something engineering, I just love this idea of seeking and thinking and always being curious. So that is what we want to really cultivate when we're looking at developing engineering mindsets. So here are, this is from some research, and if I had my notes handy, the engineering mindset that we are talking about is actually part of the Million Girls Moonshot grant that the Montana After School Alliance has received, and is participating in a lot of this focus around trying to develop that, especially girls in the STEM field. And this is one of the ways that we can do it, through developing an engineering mindset. And so they did some research and came up with these 10 critical features of a high quality engineering experience. Considering real world problems, using a systematic problem solving process, exploring properties and uses of materials, balancing constraints and criteria that require trade-offs, and envisioning multiple solutions. Applying science and math. So that goes to some of the stuff that you guys were talking about: geometric thinking, evaluating designs, making improvements, persisting and learning from failure, working in teams, and then finally envisioning yourself as an engineer. And so just to kind of to break some of those down a little bit further, if we talk about considering real world problems, what we're looking at there is, you know, maybe if you set something up where you are doing a STEM learning activity and you are having kids build a tower, let's say. So that's like an engineering activity, right? And they have a limited number of materials, that kind of thing. But it's fun and it's engaging, but it lacks a purpose. So the idea of considering real world problems means that you provide a problem for the students to explore solutions to that has real life context. And when that gives kids a much more realistic vision of what engineering is. And it also gives them more ownership in being able to solve a real world problem. And then speaking of problem solving, we're using a really specific problem solving process, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. But it's what distinguishes engineering from like tinkering or making is this multi-step engineering design process. And it keeps you from just jumping into the problem and trying to randomly come up with a bunch of different solutions, but instead it actually gives you a step-by-step process that can help support planning and testing and improving solutions when you get down to the end of it. So another thing that one of the other 10 practices is exploring materials. So the students should be given a wide selection of materials that they can, whoops, geez, Bethany, I apologize. We'll get there. The materials that they can explore to see what are their properties and what are their purposes, what material is going to be the best for the task at hand. And then children considering constraints and criteria that require trade-offs. So that balance of criteria and constraints. You need specific or design specifications to work on a project. And a lot of times those specifications can entail trade-offs. So the strongest material that you think you might want to use that would be the most successful for one of the criteria might also be really heavy and really hard to work with. So that might not actually be the best material to use. Or if you come up with a design that answers the problem that is really elegant and simple, that it might still be really expensive. And so you need to just kind of one of this practice is around helping youth to learn to work within these design constraints to figure out we want something that's strong, but we can work with it, that is beautiful, but maybe not super expensive. You know? And so this just gives kids that practice in trying to work through a problem within some actual, again, real world constraints. The fifth one is talking about coming up with a bunch of different solutions. So there's a lot of answers to problems. That's one of the things that is encompassed in engineering, that there's not one right answer. So there's lots of different opportunities to brainstorm and analyze data and think about different solutions and compare the effectiveness of different designs or options that you come up with. And then after you've thought through all of those different possibilities, you can make an informed recommendation to your client or to whoever is requesting that you solve this problem. Excuse me. It gives you the kids the option to innovate and take risks, become comfortable solving open-ended problems. It's not like a math problem specifically where you get 2 + 2 = 4, that's the only answer. It's not that kind of problem that we're working on solving. It's looking at a bunch of different ways to solve problems. And speaking of 2 + 2 = 4, they use engineering mindset uses a lot of existing math and science knowledge to help solve those problems. So you use that, it's a way to actually apply the math and science that they might be learning in school. And that's another way to make it really impactful and significant to the kids, is to use engineering activities that highlight what they are currently learning in their math and science classes. It gives a more authentic experience, and it makes that activity much more compelling for those kids. And then children can evaluate and design their designs and make improvements. So their kids aren't very often asked to evaluate their own work. A lot of times, they submit an assignment and then that's the end of it. I think, excuse me, sometimes in the only time I can think of when we really evaluated our own work would be like in an art class, and everybody sits back and does the gallery, and then we can talk about things that we like in our fellow students' work. But it doesn't happen all that often. And so in working towards an engineering mindset, we give the kids that option to look at what they've accomplished and then decide, I wonder if we could make it even better. Like, let's just look at that. Let's take the feedback from our all of our tests with this, what we may think of as a final product, and see if we can actually make some revisions and improvements and make it even better than we initially thought. Which also includes the 8th practice, which is that children learn from failure and that they learn how to persist and keep at something, even though it's hard, even though it feels like they don't right away know the answer. There's not very often, to a lot of these design problems, a really direct, simple, easy solution. So this gives kids time to work through this process to see that if they are persistent, if they don't give up and they do keep trying, that they will be able to really learn from their failure and hopefully look at that as more of a revision process to get to your ultimate goal than looking at it as failure itself. And then the 9th practice is that children are learning to work effectively in teams. Engineering is not typically something that one does all by themselves. There's usually lots of different people on an engineering project. They come together and they bring a diversity of opinions and skills and ideas and backgrounds to work towards solving the problem at hand. And then this engineering opportunities give kids a chance to experience that sometimes working in a team can be a struggle, but it also can be super fun to have, and like really rewarding to have all these different people come together using their skills and talents to come up ultimately with a great design or a great solution to a problem. And then as we are accomplishing all of these different things, we've got some pretty pictures there. We'll have to see. Let's I'm gonna finish my one last principle, and then we can talk about what it is that you are showing us. The very last piece, if we're working on all of these things together, then children envision themselves as engineers. They say this isn't something that only happens if you're already graduated from MIT. You're not you as a child in an after-school program, summer program, can really be thinking of yourself as an engineer, and then hopefully that's something that they can get excited about and follow that as a potential career path. But it also, and as such, it builds, because we worked on those real world problems, it really gives the students an opportunity to build agency and identify themselves as problem solvers. Like, they can really see that they are doing this work and they are able to solve real world problems. So those are the overall 10 practices for an engineering mindset. Does anybody have any questions or anything to add about any of those different practices?
I think that's pretty comprehensive. I'm impressed by that graph.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's something that's been kind of hard, even for me, with the struggle as we've been working with the Million Girls Moonshot. they didn't have like a solid one sentence definition of what an engineering mindset is. Instead, it is this very comprehensive, like, here are all of the different things that we look for in how to help develop an engineering mindset. Any other thoughts? And Mary, what was that you were holding up to the screen?
I did this explore your horizons with the girls. Seems like you got a million girls moonshot here, so I don't know if you're targeting girls or not, but it was like this, okay, and then we just had to figure out the folds on the score, and then there's a then you had to tape it, and then you use it for a phone, put a phone on it.
Oh yeah.
It's just a phone holder.
So you could watch
and then
movies.
You can also use it for like a notebook holder. It's sturdy enough because you score across the flutes. It's used recycled election signs.
Ha, perfect.
Yeah, and you can make 6 of them from one election sign.
Okay, cool.
And then we also did the tools making it, from the election sign. So, and it was
awesome.
real simple.
Perfect. I love it. And then also to answer the question about the Million Girls Moonshot, and I think Lori highlighted this a little bit in the chat box too. It is focused on developing more girls seeing themselves as STEM leaders, but it's also something that is applicable, obviously, to boys as well. So we're focusing on girls, but boys are invited, if that makes any sense.
I also had 6 to 10-year-olds.
Uh-huh.
You think that's pretty young? We were at the college library, and they have a makerspace there. And we first we did 4-H has junk drawer robotics.
Yep.
Where you just use things from home, and we designed a catapult. That's the first thing we did. And then they wanted to really build, so we got Arduino robots, and we build it. It's they're cheaper, and also you can it's a public domain.
Mm-hmm.
So this, the source code is available, but it's a little the code is it has some leaks in it. Gotcha. So you have to kind of really play with it, but we presented at the Makers Fair in Kalispell at the great fairgrounds. That we did it for about 3 months, and it was end of February, and then COVID hit, so that kind of, some people had to move, and that kind of destroyed everything.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And if anybody else has any other thoughts to share or questions or ideas.
And then I have another friend, his name is Nathan, and he does excavators with syringes, and he's got little kits, some of them balsa, making a bridge or making a tower, and then also using excavators to dig out things, and with the syringes for levers.
Very cool. We and I want to highlight a couple of resources that we at the Montana After School Alliance actually do have to share with you, and some ideas that you can use to incorporate and get more. Well, hang on one second. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because it won't let me go to.
What about maker spaces?
What about maker spaces?
Stillwater Christian School in Kalispell has a makerspace with laser cutters and 3D printers and such. The
Yeah, and
college has a makerspace, but they only have a 3D printer, and
yeah,
and it's limited. It's not, you can't, grade school kids can't, you have to be 16 now.
right.
And we're worried when I brought the 6 to 10-year-olds in.
Right.
But we need more maker spaces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I'm going to show you a couple of the things that that we have been doing, some options that we have here on our website that can help you sort of implement some of these ideas around engineering mindset. So if you go, the direct link, it was on that slide, but I know that's not something you can just click on. But if you go to our main page, and then you go to the initiatives and the STEM projects, you scroll down, we have a STEAM database that you can enter your, if you're doing STEAM programming, you can enter in the resource database there. And then here's the information on the Million Girls Moonshot. And then you can click through to learn more. There's more information here about what the Million Girls Moonshot specifically is. And then below that, it talks about these different transformative practices, one of which is an engineering mindset. So if you click on that, then you can see these 10 critical features, and a little, this is a little bit different, more wordy graphics than the chart that we had up on the screen just a little bit ago, but it highlights those 10 different principles that we really want to see to get kids to start to envision themselves as engineers. And then there's also recordings from the engineering mindset webinars and there's just some various webinars that have been offered, at the national level. These are not our webinars, these are from the national level. And they talk about equity and design, and Technovation is one of our partners through this. And then there's also a couple different engineering mindset activities. So if you're looking for a specific activity that you can work through, there's a handful of them down here. There's some of the different 4-H activities, but we're just gonna go through a little bit on this engineer a stringed instrument and see. I don't know why it won't let me close out of this. Sorry, guys, we're having some technical difficulties today, apparently. You can bear with me one moment. I want to just switch to a different PowerPoint, and it was not letting me close out of the other one. Apparently, I need some technical help. Yeah, Deanna, these are great resources. There's tons of great resources all over the MTA website, but that one is specific to Million Girls Moonshot and developing the engineering mindset. So let's see now. That's the one I wanted. If we can get through this. So this is the PowerPoint that was offered on there that you can use if you want to when you're going through this process with your kids in your programs. And so we're going to talk about engineering a stringed instrument. And there's also, which I can show you there, I'm going to just read a little bit from there. There's a set of directions. And so it talks about what it takes, maybe 90 minutes. You might need to do some different, it may take more than one day if you don't have that much time all in one sitting. And then there are 12 distinct steps. So remember, that was one of the things that kind of separates out engineering from things like maker spaces and tinkering, is that there's actually a process, a step-by-step process that you follow to get to your answer. And so
I'm just going to I'm sorry to interrupt. Just be careful with the papers on your.
Oh, thank you.
You're hearing it, and sometimes it's blocking the mic a little bit. So
I'm just going to leave this as if I was the teacher from Charlie Brown, and we'll see how useful that is for everyone. No, just kidding. All right, so we'll not put my paper on my computer, which is where I can see it, and then, but you guys can't hear me. So initially, the first step is talking about what is engineering and what kinds of things do you think engineers have designed specifically to help musicians? What kind of, like maybe an instrument or music stands, microphones, recording, speakers, amplifiers, those kinds of things. So you can talk about initially the engineering process. And then step 2 is learning about sounds and instruments, the stringed instruments in particular. So there's a couple different examples here. And then you're just supposed to spend some time looking at these different instruments and figuring out what do they have in common. So what are some of the things that these instruments have in common? They have strings, which obviously is what we're talking about today. They also have some sort of body that it looks like a lot of them have some sort of hole right in that body. And if you're working with older kids, they might know that sound is a vibration that resonates, and that hole helps amplify the sound vibrations. And then you can talk about some of our these are some of the different things that we maybe saw. The strings, there's a bridge, the neck of a guitar, there's this body, the sound hole, tuning pegs. So just kind of going through using an instrument that they know, likely. They probably don't know a lot of these instruments from other parts of the world, but they should be pretty familiar with a guitar. So you can kind of make this project more relevant to them in that way. Are they trying to make a guitar? No. So that's also why you would want to introduce the other instruments from all around the world to give them sort of a broad idea of what their solutions may end up looking like. And then in the third step, you design the criteria. And there's also an engineering journal that goes along with this activity that has like this table in it. And so there are a couple different, they give you 3 different criteria, and then you can add one. And they give you a list of options to add. And then you talk about how you're going to test it, and then also a place to record your results. Some of the additional criteria might be that you are going to do 5 pitches instead of 3, or you're going to do make it collapsible so you can store it, those kinds of things. And then step 4 is getting ready for testing. And so this is how they're going to figure out if they are actually meeting that criteria that they were initially assigned or chose themselves. Step 5 is thinking about the materials. And so this is a good time to just maybe even gather materials and start looking at some of the different properties that they have, and then thinking about, okay, I think one of the great ways you can practice brainstorming is also something you could do for I think of like an improv game where you say yes and. That's the only thing that you can answer in a conversation. Yes and, which means you're affirming what somebody else has already said and you're adding to it. So let's think about, yeah, maybe a cardboard box would be really good for this, but also a old tire might be really good for this project. You know, just keep adding to your list so that you have lots of options of different materials that you could use for that project. Look, there's our materials. which we then collect. So we have stuff ready to test to see if we can get it to meet the criteria that we were assigned at the beginning. Step 7 is brainstorming ideas. So here you have some options. And again, this is included in the design or in the engineering journal, where you can sketch out what you think the instrument should look like and how, and again, it gives you more than one option of sketches so that you can for sure try those out. And again, come up with as many solutions as possible to the problem that you're trying to solve. It suggests that if you don't have enough time to complete this activity in one day, that this is a good stopping point, and to have a place where you can leave your materials and your engineering journal and pick it up at a later time, a later day, something like that. But I think really that's a suggestion. And if there's something that works better for your program, please do that. Step 8 is taking one of those sketches and a design plan and then actually designing it. And so here we're going to talk about a final plan design. And this is something that can be really great. You can do this. Some of it, it looks like the way they have this designed, this activity designed is to have kids maybe work on their own. They could each draw their own design and then come together as a group, and they could come up with this finalized design of what they're going to do. That again gives them the opportunity to practice working in groups and not just being the only one to solve this problem, and benefiting from having other people's ideas and experience included. Step 9 is following your plan and then creating your stringed instrument. So this part is the actual design building, which is pretty awesome. And then we're going to test the instrument as part of this step 9. And that's where we get these in the engineering journals, they can have these different places to record whatever their results are. And then step 10 is taking turns to present what the results of your engineering work are. And so you can, this also will help develop some communication skills, which are really important in areas of your life outside of engineering. And then 11 is, let's try it again. Did your design work? What about the design didn't work? And how can you improve that? If you were going to make a different instrument, what other features might you add? So this is just, again, building on the process of coming up with more and more ideas to answer a problem. And then we circle back to our first question, which was, what is engineering? And the answer is, you just did it. This is engineering. And we can look at the different design process that you use to create the instrument and just go over and kind of review those steps to help really solidify it in their brain, that this is something that they worked on and that they actually were able to engineer. So if you see the engineering journal, so here's the directions with the materials. And this is something that I like. It's a little different from a lot of typical curriculum design that you might see, where you like to just be able to say, hey, these are the materials. I need paper and scissors and glue and string and, all these different things, and go collect them. Well, here your answer is, well, let's just wait and see what the kids decide they want to use. and then you can go come up with all of your different materials. Obviously, you can start with a certain selection ahead of time. And there is one thing further down in here that talks about asking for permission. So this isn't the kind of thing where it's like, I run the Stevens Youth Center in White Sulphur Springs. And let's say we're in there and we set these kids loose on this design project, and they've decided that they want to use the some of the snacks that we have for, marshmallows, let's say, that they want to use that to help design their instrument. Well, first they have to ask. So it does highlight that as well. So that is the activity guide. And then this is the actual journal, the engineering journal that goes along with it. So each student would have one of these, and they could look at the different, having a little closer view to come up with different answers for what things are similar. Just gives you some of the slides and a way that they can see it a little bit closer up. And then here's your set out criteria for your design, 3 different pitches, high, medium, and low, 1 pitch that is adjustable, and then it needs to be not smaller than 3 inches and not larger than 36 inches. And then here's your other options for something else you could do, including coming up with one of your own. So then the table for talking about how you're going to test it, what your criteria are going to be, and your results is in there, where you're going to sketch and do your instrument planning. And apparently some of our images are not loading, so sorry about that. So that is that's just one of these activities here, and you can see different ways that you might be able to incorporate that or come up with different ideas that are similar. And then obviously there are other sources where you can find some things, but see how that's a little bit different than just having a makerspace where the end goal is to design an instrument, because this actually goes through that multi-step process. And there we go. That's the one I wanted again. So why cultivate an engineering mindset during the summer in particular? That's what we're talking about today. Any thoughts on why summer is the perfect time to talk about developing an engineering mindset? Creative thinking time, function follows form, or form follows function discussion. Yeah, and I'm not sure about you guys, but I feel like in the summer, a lot of the summer programming, yeah, that's what kind of where I was headed, Tim. It moves away from the structured setting of school to a more, oh my goodness. It's like I've never done this before, except I have. So sorry about that. Less restrictions, time, and area to achieve fun. Exactly. That I think that this summer just provides a lot more time, a lot more space, a lot more less restrictions around, so you're in the after school programs. For us anyways, we might have 2 hours with kids after school, but in the summer you might be able to stretch that out to an all-day program or an all afternoon, or something where you just have more time to actually dig in and accomplish some of these different practices to develop engineering mindsets. Can we network? Yes, always. So just if you want to either speak to it or drop in the chat ways that you are, and Mary has shared some already, ways that she's incorporating developing engineering mindsets. Maybe not specifically into summer programs, but just to programming in general. But are there things that you're already working on and already sharing with the kids in your program that you think might spark ideas for other people? Parachute with bears and kites, cool. Like designing a parachute to
You design a parachute and then you hook up a small bear with a helmet on and you hook them onto a kite and you get it up so far, then you have a release mechanism and they parachute down.
Cool.
Yeah, it was Pennsylvania PAWS, PAWS. I'm not sure if it's still in existence or not.
Cool, thank you. Tim, you're being called out too with some ideas. 10 weeks, awesome. Are there any ideas that you would think, does this help you think of doing some of your summer programming in a different way at all?
I think we need funding.
Funding is coming. There's the ESSER2 and ESSER3 funds definitely have some availability once they're out in the state of Montana and available. There would be funding.
What's it called again? Could you put it in the chat?
Yeah, it's some of the COVID relief funding.
COVID relief.
Yeah, the ESSER, some of it goes to a lot of it goes directly to schools, but some of it is going to go to the state OPI, and the ESSER3 funds have requirements for both the schools and the state level to share, to focus on summer learning recovery, and after school. So there should be funding available there at some point. There's not a design yet for what that's going to look like. So just, especially if you are connected with us on the MTAA newsletter and email list, we will be sending out much more information about that as plans develop for how we can actually access some of those funds. There, Lori just put the information, the direct link to that page on our website on the relief funding in the chat. The after action review of Yes and. Yeah, let's just see, what else can we do? How can we make this even better? And then Allie. Oh, gotcha. Lori's catching you up. Yeah, and we're always happy, as Lori mentioned, we're always happy to connect with anyone individually, or also we can set up some groups. Let's say there's some other really cool work going on in Kalispell, and maybe we can help connect you with some of those other people. So some of you may know that really I have a pretty large STEM focus in my work, but I also have a really large focus on social and emotional learning and trauma-informed care. And so some of the things that really sparked for me reading this are things that translate to those areas. So when we talk about building resilience, learning that you can fail and it's not the end of the world. You can pull yourself back up and keep going. Looking at the yes and part of it. Yep, that was great, but now how can we make it better? Like all of those kinds of things help develop resilience. And then also looking at interpersonal relationships. And when you're having to work with other people in a team, that develops those social skills and those ways that we interact with other people. Problem solving and critical thinking are huge in the world of social and emotional learning, and as well as agency, creating self-awareness, seeing yourself as an engineer, seeing yourself in the future is also part of building social and emotional competencies. So this, to me, I see how this really dovetails really nicely together, where you may sort of at the basic level be trying to work towards developing some STEM skills, developing engineering mindset. But a lot of that work that you're doing is really also helping these kids build some of their self-awareness and their skills to just really exist in the world, you know? So I think that this is a really cool way to incorporate those two things. Any other reasons you think that building an engineering mindset is really important? Whether it's engineering related or other related? I am taking a minute to look through the chat and seeing some really great ideas from Deanna at PBS and Tim keeping a box of failed 3D prints to show that failure is a positive engineering process. You're not failing, you're progressing. I love that. Just because it didn't work doesn't mean it's over. You know, keep trying, you'll get there. Yep. Problem solving works in relationships too. Exactly. Imagination is more important than knowledge. I have to agree. And I think one of the things I skipped over that I wanted to highlight earlier in the notes, I think in the section that we talked about using your existing math and science knowledge, one of the other things that it added was that you take that existing math and science knowledge and you add your creativity to it, right? So you have this knowledge, but how can you take that knowledge and then shape it, change it, and apply it to the problem that you have at hand? Mary's throwing lots of great ideas into the chat as well. Any last questions about any of the things that we talked about today? It feels like we've got a really solid audience that is pretty aware of engineering as a whole. But any final questions that you might have for us, or other ways that we can help you through this process?
I think it's worth a look at Junk Drawer Robotics, just because how they do it is it's step by step, and it's by engineering step by step. And I said the first one was function follows form, or form follows function. It could be either one of those. Like say if you had a red light, you always expect the red light to be on the top. So that's a form. And then so function is following the form, or and the other way is if you have some glasses, then you have to have a function that you have to be able to see, and then the function the form follows the function in that case.
Awesome, thank you.
So, but I mean, that's just the first step, but they kind of have it lined out. They did it with, I think, Bell Labs or something, and they have it lined out where, first step, next step, the next step, the next step. So, it's just introducing engineering principles, but slowly. And then also using charts and graphs and all kinds of other things like that too, so.
Awesome, yeah. And Tim asked for a copy of the slides. We will post both the slides in a PDF form and the recording that we made of this webinar on our website. I'm guessing on that same engineering mindset page. Does that sound right, Lori? Katie, our communications guru, is the one that I think ends up kind of helping figure out where the best places are for those, but then we can also send a link to you as well. And the slides for the actual, like the string instrument activity are included on that website. With that, if there aren't any other questions or ideas, thank you so much for being here. And Deanna, we're happy to always provide some space where people can gather and share ideas. So if there are other ideas that you would like to have an opportunity to share, let us know and we can find a time to help kind of coordinate that. And then, Lori, do you have any other thoughts you might like to share?
I think just to let everybody know too, we're changing up our email strategy starting in June. So we'll start doing first of the month or first weekday of the month email that gives sort of a breakdown in different areas. And one of those is going to be specific to quality programming. If you haven't seen our guiding principles, they're on our website. And that'll just allow doing some deeper dives into some of these topics and helping point you to resources on our website that are just helping to make them more relevant and applicable to the programming that you're doing. And we'll also be surveying in the next week, I think, probably getting surveys out to people that will be looking for feedback, thinking about fall and professional development. Now that we're able to sort of maybe consider getting out in person with people, we want to get some feedback from folks about what that might look like, what seems like would be the most useful, and just always looking for your feedback. But there's a lot of resources on our website. We'll be adding more, trying to get those into little pieces, but always let us know what you need. We're happy to support.
Yeah, thanks, Lori. And thanks to all of you for showing up today. We really appreciate you being here and sharing your thoughts and ideas. And as we mentioned before, if you have anything else, any questions, anything that we can do to support you, please do reach out and have a lovely rest of your day. Hopefully the sun is shining and gorgeous everywhere like it is here. So take good care, you guys.
Bye.